Last, we have the income approaches. So when we think about the income approach, this is usually for commercial properties. So the capitalization method is looking at what a building could make within a year typically, and it's taking into account all of the factors. So when we see these letters here, PGI minus V plus C equals EGI. PGI is the potential gross income. That's all the money that could potentially come in the units. Then you have to subtract out for potential vacancies in collections like evictions, that process. Once you take that out, you have the effective gross income. You then take the effective gross income and subtract out the operating expenses. Operating expenses consist of things that are fixed, variable, or you need reserves. So those funds are there to move the building or keep it running properly. And when you subtract that from the EGI, you get the NOI, which is net operating income. Net operating income would then be divided by a cap rate to give the value of the property. So investors are looking to see, okay, well, how much would I possibly spend on this property? What is it worth? When you think of the cap rate, if there's a high risk, there's a high rate, then there's a lower value to that property. Someone would not be willing to spend that much on something that has high risk as an alternative to a low rate, low risk, high value. So you have more stability there. So when we look at the relationship between NOI, cap rate, and value, I is NOI for short, R is for cap rate, V is for the value of the property. You look at those formulas. If you're looking or given the income, then you would be able to, if you're given the income and maybe let's say the rate, you would be able to find the value. If you're given the rate, you'd be able to find the income and the value together. And then the income equals the rate times value. You have to memorize what this looks like in terms of how they are related to one another. For test purposes, they will give you 2 out of 3 for the capitalization method, and you must know how to plug and play. Number 2, gross rent multiplier. So for this one, it is based off of comp properties and what they sold for and how they're currently performing. So here, the GRM is a factor. So if an investor was looking to purchase a property that had similar rental rolls, for instance, you would look at the comp property sales price and divide by that comp's monthly rent that's charged to their tenants. It would give you a GRM. You would then take the GRM and multiply it by the potential rent in the subject property. And from there, it'll give you the subject property's value, also known as the suggested sales price. And then you go down to the third method, which is the gross income multiplier. Very similar, but there, instead of measuring rent, it's the income. So you would look at the comp's property sales price, what it's sold for, and divide by the gross annual income that it's making, and it'll give the factor of the GIM. Then you would take the subject property's annual gross income, multiply it by the GIM, and it would give the subject property's value, also known as the suggested sales price that an investor would be willing to spend. So those are the different ways that you can calculate the income approach.